Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining today's session on saasguru classes. So, what is all about? So, want to your Salesforce certification, you can go to community and make use of tailored assessments that are going to progress and in your certification journey. There are also summarized short videos and micro modules that will help you understand the concept better rather than you demo videos. Then there is a gamified study group wherein you'll be able to see badges and learn more in a fun way. So as saasguru, we are here to help you in your learning journey with your certifications on Salesforce. We'll help you personalize practice for the certification. If you are not the part of our community yet, I request you to join the Slack community wherein you can get the latest updates on getting how to get a feature, you can get products, you can get notified on the live classes and webinars, and you will also be entitled to get help from our gurus. Link will be soon shared on the chat. You can click on it and join the community on both these channels. Discussion or class on today, which is Salesforce sharing model. So we already discussed about security controls in our earlier classes, wherein we had a good look at the overall system architecture with respect to security, password policies, login hours, IP restrictions, authentication, difference between authentication and authorization.
In the last security session, we discussed about the overall Salesforce security on the organization level, the password policies, the login hours, IP restrictions, authentication, authorization, and some additional security controls. Now, today, we are going to discuss about the sharing model that Salesforce has. So in terms of sharing model, we'll talk about security at various levels. We'll talk about security at field level, record level, object level, or organizational level. All right. And what does a record level security mean? What is an org wide default? What are profiles and what are permission sets? Everything might look overwhelming at first, but as and when you go into details, you can easily make out what does each terminology means. I've seen people who are starting their Salesforce journey getting confused between, hey, I don't know, like what's the difference between a profile and a permission set? What does a record level security mean? So we'll go through each and every aspect of it and try to understand what does it mean. So start with the object level security, wherein we know there are different levels of security, right? At field level, you can control the access to individual fields. At the record level, you have access to certain records of an object, right? At the object level, it will be object level security, wherein you can determine whether the user can create, read, edit, or delete certain object records or not. And it can be given at profile and permission set level. The topmost in the hierarchy is organization level security, and it will supersede all of them mentioned below. So this will help us establish when and from where user can log in, right? And it will also define the login IP ranges to allow login from certain IP addresses. This is something we discussed in our last security call. And if you have not had a chance to attend that call, the recordings are already available in our Slack channel. You can reach out to us and we can share that one with you. Moving on, now what are profiles? Profiles is nothing but a collection of settings and permissions each user will have. And each users will be assigned only one profile, but it can have multiple permission sets. What profile will control is the data and features that users can access. There are few considerations that you might want to look at before even using the profiles. Is the baseline permissions to any objects are determined by users' profile and permission sets. Org wide default set the baseline access to the users to view the record, not owned by them. So basically, org wide default has nothing to do with the object level security. It's very much different and it will be controlled by profile. Anything related to record level security will be done by org wide defaults. administrators in the Salesforce org can open record access using role hierarchies. So role hierarchy is nothing but a hierarchy of your particular, then administrator will be able to open the record access using role hierarchies. Role hierarchy is nothing but a hierarchy that your organization will follow, as in CEO will sit on top of the role hierarchy. After that, your managers and then other salespeople, and then yourself can come in the role hierarchy if you're part of it, and determine the access. If a sales manager is able to see a record, anybody above in the role hierarchy should also be able to see it. Sharing rules can be used to further extend record access to additional groups of users. We can do that by determining certain criteria and sharing rules. We'll cover that more on that later. The record owners and users with modified access can manually share individual records with other users by using the share button. So there is a share button on the page layouts. You can always go there and share the records manually. Now view all data and modify all data permissions over all other security settings. So if on profile level, you have given view all or modify all data permission for an object, irrespective of what sharing rule is saying on the record level security, that user will have access to everything in the object. All the records in the system will be there. Now there's a use case that I just mentioned. The CEO would like to restrict the ability to create and customize reports to certain group of users. How can the administrator achieve this? The solution would be to create and assign a permission set with create and customize report permission to selected users. So what you can do is you can go to a particular profile. You can create a permission set, go to that permission set, edit it, and find the setting, create and customize reports. Save that permission set and assign it to the user. Once you do that, that user will get an added permission on top of what he has. Because it already says it's only for certain group of users, that's why we have chosen a permission set. Otherwise, we could have only done it on the profile itself. So now here, with help of permission set, we are allowed to choose which users get to get this permission, irrespective of the profiles. Okay, moving on to the record level security. Record level security is on the basis of how records will be shared for different types of users, right? We can make use of org-wide defaults to determine whether a record is shareable or not. Anything which is like private in nature will be private and only be visible to the owner of that particular record, right? So the org-wide defaults here are most restrictive and at the bottom of the hierarchy, and they will set the default level access of users to other users' records, right? On top of that, we have role hierarchy. Role hierarchy will broaden the amount of records that you are able to access. So if any user is on the higher side of the hierarchy, they will be able to see all the records that are owned by people in the below them in the hierarchy. Sharing rule will determine extend the access of records, right? We can have a predefined criteria or record ownership, and they cannot be stricter than the organization-wide defaults or role hierarchy. They will only be able to grant additional access like role hierarchy. Now there is manual sharing, which is the least restrictive. It's like you go on any record. If you feel the peer is not having access to that record, you can just click on a button known as share. You can click on it. You can enter the name of the person who should have access to it and give them. So it's like a case-to-case basis sharing. If you feel they should have access, they will get the access. There's no criteria over here. There's no rule over here. So that's why it is least restrictive one, because anybody can give access to other person. Some key considerations while using the sharing rules and record level sharing is that the baseline permissions to any object are determined by user's profile and permission sets. So if the user does not even have the object level permission, they will not be able to see the records. So you need to mention that baseline permission over here. The org-wide defaults, I'll be calling them OWD from now onwards, because that's how we have the Salesforce lingo, right? So OWD will set the baseline access to users to view records not owned by them, right? So that will enable that. And administrators can open record access using role hierarchies. Sharing rules can be used to further extend record access to additional group of users, which means that you can determine any public group that can have access to a particular set of records using some criteria. You can do that using sharing rules. The record owners and users with modify all access can manually share individual records with other users. So if I have modify all access on any particular object, assume that I can do anything on the records that are present on that object, be it owned by me, owned by somebody else, or being created by somebody else from a different part of role hierarchy. Okay. We already discussed the OWDs has different levels of permissions that they can give or access levels, right? So the different types of access levels are public, read, write, transfer. So in this type of access, users will be able to view, edit, and change ownership. And it's only available on leads and cases. These are standard objects to track leads and cases of the system. Another one is public read write. Here, when the users will have object level permission, they will be able to view, edit, and report on all the records. Next is public read only. As the name says, they will only be able to view and report on the records. They will not be able to make any changes to it or edit it. Public full access is only available for campaigns, and this will provide users to view, edit, transfer, delete, or report on all records of those campaigns. Private, most predominantly used is a private, because every time you design the sharing model for Salesforce, you have to go by the principle of least privilege, which means you have to assume that any user should only see what he's supposed to see. Otherwise, don't show him anything in the system. So by default, you keep everything private, and only the record owners and users above that role in the hierarchy will be able to view, edit, and report on those records. There's another special access level known as controlled by parent, right? In this particular type of access will only work on the detail side of a master detail relationship, and anybody who sees the master record will always be able to see the child records, and it is an implicit thing, and it will be known as controlled by parent. Now there is a separate OWD for price book. There are three types of OWDs for price books. Price books are nothing but different types of prices that you can define on products. Say, for example, a product is being sold globally, say Apple iPhone. It is sold globally, but it has different prices depending on the country that mobile is being sold in. So you can create price books for different countries and store their values. Now, how these price books can be accessible by the users will be defined at OWD level first. And there are only three values when you go there and see: use, view only, and no access. All users can view price books and add them to opportunities, which means you are able to just use it to add it to an opportunity. Users can add any product within that price book to that opportunity, which is fine. I can access the products as well. Now, if it's view only, users will only be able to view in a report on the price books. They will never be able to use that price book against any opportunity or order. So that's the difference between use and view only OWD settings. And only users with edit access to the opportunities can add them to opportunities. No access means they cannot see it, right? And you can manually share that price book to the other user in case they want to access it, right? There is another thing. The administrators can set OWD for internals and external users separately, right? So that your portal users have different visibility of different objects. However, always make sure the external org defaults cannot be more permissive than the internal org wide default. So if internal is private, the external cannot be public read only. All right. So a use case here, the company has configured a custom object in their org, and they only record owners should have access to the records. And the records are not shared with users in the upward role hierarchy. How can the administrator achieve this? So there is a checkbox in front of OWDs which says grant access using hierarchies. By default, that checkbox is checked, but in case you disable it, anybody above in the role hierarchy of that user will not be able to see those records. Anything that was implicit earlier is not implicit anymore. Let's move on to the next one, which is role hierarchy. We can easily see the role here. You see, like this is your typical role hierarchy of your organization. Anybody who is on the top of the hierarchy shall be able to see the records owned by the people down in the hierarchy. So here CEO should be able to see all the records of these users. All right. So this is an example, right? And once you go here, you can click and add roles. You can name the roles and also specify whom this role belongs to. Okay. Now, moving back to the right. So I've already mentioned what is role hierarchy and how role hierarchy works. There are some key features. Users at any given role have view, edit, and report access data owned or shared by the users below them in the role hierarchy, right? On the same role, we cannot share it like how we share it on the hierarchy basis. Now, there are three caveats here: contact access, opportunity access, and case access. So any role can allow users to view, edit, or have no access to the opportunities associated with the accounts, opportunities, contacts, or cases that the user owns. So you remember here I was creating a role, right? So here these three options you can select. That users in the role cannot access the opportunities that they do not own that are associated with the accounts that they do own. Right? It may be that two different teams are creating opportunities on the same account and we don't want them to see each other's opportunities. So you can select this. And similarly, you can select whether they can view or edit all opportunities with the accounts that they own, regardless of who owns the opportunity. Right? So this particular setting can be set up while setting the roles. Now, any object access determined by the profile supersedes the record level access. So if it's view all, everybody will be able to view irrespective of anything mentioned in the OWD or anything. Now, grant access using hierarchies, we already saw that example. So I'm going to skip that a bit and the demo of it is over here. If you want to see the demo, you can always come to this course, play it and see how to add a role and always select grant access using hierarchies in the sharing settings. Next concept is manager groups. Now, what are manager groups? So basically, your administrator will be able to enable manager groups to allow users to manually share the records with the direct and indirect managers or direct and indirect subordinates. What does this mean is, so if this person is a user, right? The one in the dark orange highlighted one, if you want to share any records owned by this user to users manager group, you can create a manager group and share it. By the virtue of role hierarchy, only this particular user and this particular user will be able to see that record, correct? And if you want to share that particular record with the user's manager subordinate group, means subordinate meaning people that are present in the subordinate of this particular user, right? So this would be your subordinate group in the second box. Every user will have two manager groups, manager group and manager subordinate group, where manager group will include users direct and indirect managers. Like I said, he's the direct manager and this one is the indirect manager. Similarly, with the subordinate group, users direct and indirect reportees will be part of the subordinate groups. But before you implement this, there are a few considerations that you would see. That user can gain access to records they don't own through other means apart from role hierarchies, such as profile settings, sharing rules, or manual sharing of individual records. Like I said, that will supersede, so it will give the access. Now, users will, with a view all and modify all object permissions, get record level access, even if grant access using hierarchies is deselected. Anytime, view all, modify all, they have access to everything. So in case you find out that some user is able to access all the data of that particular record, go check on the profile or permission set level whether this thing is enabled or not. Activities associated with a custom object for which grant access using hierarchies option is disabled are still visible to the users in upward hierarchy because activities work in a different way. Default access on custom object on detail side of the master detail relationship is reverted to public read write, and grant access using hierarchies is selected if the relationship is deleted. Okay, so you have to make sure that if you're changing the master detail relationship, this default access on custom object will follow. Users record access granted by a sharing set isn't extended to their superiors on the role. So there is a concept known as sharing sets, wherein by the virtue of lookup, you can give sharing to a portal user, right? Now, in that case, a portal user has access to some set of records that will not be extended to their superiors because it was shared by the sharing set. And there is a use case that ASM of a company wants to share records of custom sales target objects with the sales reps. The sales achievements records of each sales rep should be shared with the user's management chain. Sharing setting for both these custom objects is set to private, and grant access using hierarchies is disabled. Now that's tricky, like they are private and hierarchies is not set up. So how will their managers get the access? Now let's look at it. Which feature can administrator leverage to meet this requirement is using the manager groups that we just discussed, because administrator will be able to enable those manager groups so that those ASMs in the company can share their sales target records with their manager subordinate groups, because for the manager, they will be the subordinates working down below in the hierarchy, right? So that would be the solution over here. Now, as we discussed, these sharing rules will be used to extend the access of the records to user or group based on predefined criteria or record ownership, right? So sharing rules will not be stricter than the OWDs or role hierarchies. The reason being is they will be always granting the additional rights for the access, and there will be 3 types of sharing rules. There will be owner-based that we just saw, right? There will be criteria-based. You can set up a criteria that I am a user from US, so anybody in US should see US records. That's a criteria. And there is another rule known as guest user. So these are the criteria-based sharing rules that will provide access to your guest users or unauthenticated users. Now, what are guest users over here? That if you have a public page for portal wherein users are not logging in, so the person who is going to be accessing your public site of the page will be known as guest users, and you might want to or might not want to show some records to them, like products if you are showing, right? So you can make sure that certain kind of guest users get to see visibility of certain products only. So you can mention that thing in the guest user sharing rules. Now, sharing rules can only be used to grant wider access. We already saw that. To be able to use sharing rules, OWDs must be public read or private to create them. So sharing rules will automatically grant access to related records. For example, sharing an opportunity also provides users the view access to opportunities account, because that is a parent of that opportunity and it will give them the implicit right to access those accounts. Users in the upward hierarchy get the same access as the subordinates when a record is shared by a subordinate using a sharing rule. Now, this might be a little bit confusing, but if we go into the org, right, I'll go back to the sharing settings, because I saw someone write in the chat they are not here with manager thingy, so and subordinate one. So let's go down here and create a new sharing rule for a user. Now here you're defining the name and everything, the rule type, guest user access based on criteria and based on group membership. Now users who are member of this particular group, and select the users to share with, right? So here you'll be able to see portal subordinates, portal roles and subordinates, and normal roles. So you'll be able to share it with your subordinates on the portal level as well. Moving on, user licenses that do not support roles cannot be included in sharing rules. Now, every user will have their own role, right? If you go to users and see the role, but there is one sort of user like customer community license will not have roles. So they will not be entitled for sharing rules, which means any advanced sharing for those users cannot be done. Okay. Encrypted fields cannot be used in criteria-based sharing rules, which is fine because we will not be able to find the value in the criteria. So that is one consideration you should be taking care of. Some components of a sharing rule would be records, users, and access level. So like we said, which records you want to share is first you're going to determine. With users, records can be shared with groups of users by role, territory, or by defining a public group. And you can define the access level. So these are all mentioned over here. If you do one hands-on, you'll be able to see the access level, right? Select the users to share with and select which users to be shared, right? Then moving on to the manual sharing, it's just, if you go to a record here in Sales Cloud, say, inside saasguru, we will go to accounts. This is a button over here known as sharing, and you can search for a user and determine whether what access did they have to account. In case of accounts, you can determine cases and opportunity, but usually it will just be the access on the object that the record belongs to. Here you will be able to select these many things: a user, a customer portal user, a portal role, public group, role internal, and portal subordinates, like we have mentioned over here in this page. So these will be the different yeah, here, sorry, it's mentioned over here that these will be available for these types of users or groups of users. Now users can click on the sharing hierarchy button to know why a user has access to the record, right? So there is a sharing hierarchy also available. Let me see if I've enabled that. It's not actually. Yeah, here you'll be able to see view sharing hierarchy. And we'll see who all users has access to this particular record and what's the reason and what amount of access do they have. So in case you want to find out, you can go to this sharing hierarchy and see whether they have full access, read-write, read-only, or private access. Salesforce will delete the manual shares created by a record owner if the ownership of the record is transferred. In addition, manual shares or the child records are also deleted. For example, transferring the account ownership, the manual shares created by the owner of the account and its child records such as opportunities or cases are deleted. This will be helpful in case when someone is leaving the organization, right? So they will transfer the ownership of the record to some other person. Now, the other person might not know the people with whom the record was shared and it might be a security risk. So what Salesforce does is they will delete these sharing records when the owner changes on the account record or any record as a matter of fact. Now, this is a new feature that we're going to read about is the restriction rules. They're very new in town and I really like them because like I said earlier, the activities will be shared with everybody, right? No matter how much access you have to have on your custom object, the activities on that custom object will still be visible to everybody. Now I want to restrict that extra access that is being given to those ones. So I can create restriction rules, right? Because restriction rules enhance the organization's data security by allowing only specific users to access certain records, right? So you can again specify a criteria, right? And mention that because of this criteria, only a user should only be able to see certain records. Now, right now, at the moment, they're only available for events, tasks, contracts, timesheet entries, and custom objects. And these rules are only applied to certain features such as list views, lookups, related lists, reports, and such. So if you're trying to query some records from Apex with sharing, right? I know this is going beyond the scope of this particular session, but Apex is nothing but the code that we write in the backend. And when we query some records, we get the results. And those results will not follow restriction rules. So you have to make sure when you're applying restriction rules, you're only letting the users have the view of the records via the list views, lookups, related lists, reports, and search. All right. Now there is a use case wherein a company uses a private data sharing model for the customer accounts, which means the accounts are private. It is required that the accounts are visible to specific SMEs based on accounts industry, right? The owner should also be able to share an account with product SMEs on a need basis. What configuration should the administrator leverage? Now, in such cases, like try to divide the question. What question or use case is asking? The first part is saying the accounts are private. Okay. The second part is saying they have to be visible to specific SMEs. Specific SMEs means there is some group of users who should be able to see account based on their industry. So let's assume there is a group of users with industry 1 and accounts industries are stored in some pick list value, right? So for the first part, we can create a criteria based sharing rule wherein we can put a criteria on account saying that if industry equal to manufacturing, then give access to SME manufacturing, right? So that is a criteria that you develop while sharing. So first part is already done. The second part, the owner should also be able to share an account with product SMEs on need basis. Now, since it's a need basis, there is no definite criteria, no logic. It's all intermittent, right? You can go by the route of manual sharing over here. So next time when you see such use cases, try to break down the requirements and see whether any criteria is involved, any logic is there. If no logic, then straightforward manual sharing will apply. Otherwise, you'll have different sides of sharing rules like ownership and criteria, and you can easily choose amongst them. Session, which will start with the field level security, which is now at the bottom. So the next step is controlling the visibility of fields to users, right? Which can be done by field level security. You can specify whether the user can view, edit, or delete the value of a particular field of an object, right? On the page layouts, you can control the visibility of fields on the object's edit and detail page. In contrast, field level security manages access on fields on page layouts, reports, list views, related list, API, and search results. But there are few considerations that you should be aware of. That FLS, another lingo, is you never call them field level security. It's FLS, right? Just short form of it. So FLS are available for professional, enterprise, performance, unlimited, and developer editions of Salesforce. FLS overrides the page layout, and it's more restrictive of two settings. For example, if a field is required in a page layout and read only in the field level security settings, the FLS will override the page layout and field will be read only for the user. FLS can be set for multiple profiles simultaneously. I'll show you how. FLS can be extended to specific users for granting read and edit access to required fields using permission sets. Now you can set it up at profile level and permission set level both. Okay, so once you set FLS, you'll see two options. One is visible and one is read only. I see, Shweta, you're raising your hand, but can you put your question in the chat and I can cover it later? Thank you. Then if you select visible, right, the field will be visible to the corresponding profile of users. And if it's read only, right, it will restrict the profile users to edit that field value. Okay. Field level security will override, modify, or data and view or data profile permissions that you have to remember. Okay. Now, there are some factors that will determine the field level access, which is FLS. Okay. Page layouts, we can mark the fields as visible, required, editable, or read only. We can give them permissions, edit read-only fields that will allow to edit read-only respective of the page layout and FLS security settings. There are some universally required fields. If a custom field is made universally required from field level setting, it overrides any page layout or field level security settings, making the field visible and editable. Okay, I can show one demo over here if it gets too much. Right, let's go to the account again. Now here you have fields and relationships. You can see different fields on the account object. So if I want to have a look at, say, number of locations as my custom field, I can set field level security, click on it, and I can determine whether for which profile the fields are read-only or visible, right? So if you want a marketing user to not see this one, you can just remove this and save it. Okay. You can also determine whether the field is required or not at field level. So I'm going to edit this and set this as required. Now, if I do that, this field will always be required on the page layout. The reason being, if it's set to required and it's not available on the page layout, then when user is entering the information from form, this field will be left out and you'll never be able to save the records. So irrespective of what the security is, this field should always be visible. So that was one of the considerations in the universally required field section over here. Okay. Then lookup and system fields. Enabling the required permission in the lookup field setting restricts user to view record names in lookup and system field. User must have read access to those records. All right. So once be very careful when you are giving access to fields that are lookup, and if they're referencing to some other object which they do not have access to, will not let them see the records. The roll-up summary and formula fields are read-only on detail pages and not available on edit pages. They can also be visible to users even if they have reference fields that our users cannot see. Then a company uses a custom employee object and common page layouts for its profile users. Okay, so let's break it down this one as well, that the company has a custom employee object and common page layouts for all profile users. To meet the compliance requirements, only specific profile users should be able to view payroll and SSN information. Now they're asking to see for different profiles, the visibility of these two fields should be controlled. How can the administrator control the field access? Here they're saying deselect the visible option in the FLS of all profiles that should not have access, which basically is saying to not have this checkbox enabled, visible one. So here you'll see, right, we are not able to edit it, correct? Because it's a standard field and we will not be able to edit it. Then other record sharing options are groups. A group is set of individual users in a particular role, territory, or other groups. In addition to users in specific role, a group can be configured to contain all users below a specified role or territory. We call them public groups in the Salesforce language, wherein they can be created by administrators and delegated administrators. Any users in Salesforce organization can use these groups. For example, administrator has created a CSR group where anyone can share information of records about ongoing CSR activities in the organization. You remember when I was showing you the criteria-based sharing rule example, there was an option for public group as well. So in case with certain criteria, want to share records with a group of users, you can always do that. There are personal groups. They can be created by each user for their own use, and they will be only available to the user who created the group. Unlike public groups, that's why they are known as personal groups. And for example, a user may need to share a specific records with a certain set of people. They will be able to do that via personal groups only. So the use cases of a public group can be to set up sharing access via sharing rules. We covered that one. Manually share records with other users. So you might have seen that when I was sharing the records, there were many options available to share with. Public group was one of them. Share a Salesforce CRM content library. Content library is nothing but a files, a set of files that are part of your Salesforce org will be able to be shared using the public group. Assign actions to specific groups of users in Salesforce Knowledge. In Knowledge also, you can select any actions that needs to be assigned to a group set of people. You can do that. Synchronize contacts owned by other users. Then there are some considerations that you should see, like create groups of users that need similar access levels. Do not put your CEO and the most like intern and CEO in same public group. That's not even, valid, and try to understand why a public group is getting created. Salesforce will allow the creation of nested groups. That is, you can add a public group as a member into a public group. You should avoid nesting beyond 5 levels because it will get complicated and it's very difficult to backtrack, especially in the enterprise level projects. Create groups for users that do not need to be added or removed frequently. Grant access using hierarchies option can be selected while creating public groups to share records with the upward hierarchy of group members. So there's another way of granting the access using hierarchies here. When digital experiences are enabled, the roles and subordinate members are converted to roles, internal and portal subordinate members, which we just saw in the criteria-based sharing rule. Moving on to queues. Now, queues are specifically used to prioritize, distribute, and assign records to a group of users who share workloads. Correct? So if I assign a queue instead of owner, the record gets assigned to a queue, and then every member will be able to see that particular record in their list views. And once they accept that particular record, the queue will get changed to the record owner. So the example would be a queue of a support representative working on cases from various channels. So if there are multiple cases coming in, we don't know which user is available to take them. So we'll assign it to a queue. Anytime a particular agent is free or his workload is less, he can take up that one from the queue and get it assigned to himself or herself. So the following users can be added to a queue: individual users, roles or roles and subordinate, and public groups. Records can be assigned to queues in following ways: using the assignment rules and manually. Assignment rules will add records to queue automatically when they're created based on specific record criteria. Okay, so that is a basic use case of case management. Manually also you can assign it to a queue. Manually how? I'll go here. I don't think I have a queue in my dev org yet, but here I can, there's no queue right now. Otherwise I should be able to assign it to a queue and be done with it. Okay, anyways, let's move on. The account, opportunity, and case teams. So on a specific account, if there are multiple people working to get that account in the system or do the business with them, now you only have defined the sharing rules for one particular set of user. What if people from different teams want to have a look at account and there is no specific logic? One way is to share manually, but the other way would be to add that user to account team, right? So that they can work on that account together. An account team cannot own an account, but it will allow the owners or admins to extend the record level sharing, reporting, and process automation capabilities. An account team member can be granted read, write, or private access to the account and its related contacts, cases, and opportunities. So let's see if I have this enabled somewhere. Yeah, it's not, but here in the related list, you will be able to see account teams and you'll be able to add users and specify the access for each user, like a read, write, read. Okay. And anybody who gets added to those account team will be having access to the related opportunities or cases as well. And similar thing will follow with the opportunity and cases. Let's look at the use case that a sales rep at a company works with a predefined team for each account they create. The group consists of a user sales manager, customer success manager, and finance point of contact. Now let's break it down till here. We have a sales rep, we have accounts, now we have a team with 3 types of users. Respective team members should be added automatically to accounts created by a sales rep. So sales rep is creating an account and these three people should be getting the access automatically. So now there is no manual intervention needed. What feature are you going to involve? The solution will be to add a default account team. So once you define a default account team on the personal settings page, the default account team will be added automatically to the account. So your team will already get created on creation of during ownership transfer of that particular account. Now moving on to the last part of this session would be reports and dashboard folder settings. Now what are folders? What comes to your mind when you talk about folders? Like you've all grown up using Macs and PCs. You're creating different folders in your My Computer or Finder, right? So these are nothing but the placeholders to store your data systematically. Similarly, in Salesforce, your folder will provide a place to store your reports, dashboards, or email templates. It is very much possible that you might want to show this folder to somebody or share it with some people on only a public group or an individual user, right? So your folder will be made public, private, or shared on the basis of how your organization works, right? Just consider it as normal folder. You can always access it like this. From here, go to reports. See the folders here. I go to all folders. I have some bot reports, some other reports over here. I can create a new folder in the name. And if I select one folder, I can go to the security settings. Oops. Too fast. I can share it. The specific set of users, roles, ordinates, subordinates, groups, partner roles, or customer users. All options you'll get. All right. So we covered this whole thing in the demo that I gave. Report and dashboard folders. Salesforce control the sharing of reports and dashboard at folder level and not at individual report and dashboard level. So anything that resides inside this particular folder will be visible to everybody who has access to the folder. It's not per level, per report, per dashboard sharing. It's per folder sharing. Always remember that. And when a report or dashboard is saved, it goes into user's private folder by default. What is a private folder now? Here, created by me. It's my private folder. Nobody can see it, right? But if you want to move that report to some other folder, you can always do them. Okay. The reports or dashboards in the private folder will not be visible to anyone, including the system admin. So you should always make sure that if you want to share records or reports with anybody, it should not reside in your private folder. And reports or dashboards saved in a folder that isn't private are visible to everyone having permission to view the reports or dashboards. So you have to give an explicit permission as well so that people can see the reports. Now there's few insights that users can use global search to search for report or dashboard folders. But global search is not supported for folders in Salesforce mobile app. Users can find folders within the selected report dashboard or folder context by using quick search. So we already showed the demo of that. Let's move on to the access levels for reports and dashboard folders. There's a viewer access, there's an edit access, and manager access. Let's have a look at it. Oops. So we go here, I click on share. So view, edit, and manage. 3 kinds of access you can give. And what does each mean is that viewer access, by the name it suggests, is can view the dashboards and reports. Edit, they can view and edit the reports and dashboard which are residing in that folder. Manager access, more than edit access, there is another access known as manager, which means manager can view, rename, save, delete, and share the reports in the folder. The profile and permission sets will always supersede the folder sharing access and determine a user's access to a folder content. So that one thing also you have to remember. Now, There are some report permissions as well at profile level. Create and customize report. This will allow you to create reports, create report folders, edit my reports. These are pretty much understood by the name of it. If you are not having edit my reports option, anything that is created by you will be created in the shared folders. View reports in public folders and manage reports in public folders. These are the permissions. Similarly, dashboard have the same number of permissions that will be enabling you to see or not see the dashboard inside some folders. Email template folder sharing. Now, what is an email template? Email template is a proper template that you define. So you must be getting all those saasguru emails to join the session, the reminders to complete your courses, right? Or any other marketing email or a sales email, anything to remind you, right? Every email is a part of template, as in the company will define how the email should be sent, except your name part, which is a variable. Your email is again a variable. The whole same email will be sent out to everybody. Now, let's not imagine that one person is sitting and sending out emails to everybody. No, there is a template set and there is an automation written which will fill up your name every time you're trying to receive an email, correct? So now those email templates can be many email templates, right? There'll be many formats for different regions, different types of emails, different types of actions. They can also be stored inside the email template folders. And the system administrator and any user with modifier data create folders for Lightning email template permission will be able to create email template folders. Okay, similar to the reports and dashboards, there will be a private folder, right? And to be able to view, create, edit, and delete public email templates, a user must modify all data permission. They should have that permission. Users with view all data permission can see templates in other users' private folders, but cannot modify them. Users with view all data or modify all data permissions can access public templates, their private templates, and templates shared with them. Partner portal users can access only public email templates, which is right. Because they're external users, they should not be having access to internal things. Since these were the Lightning email template folder considerations and these are the classic template folder considerations, right? They both are different because the way the emails are being sent out from these two different platforms is not very same. There's a use case that finance, marketing, and IT teams have different report requirements. The company wants to ensure the team gets access to reports relevant to the report metric and KPIs. Now let's break it down over here. There are 3 teams working with complete 3 different business processes. And what company wants to ensure is that they will get access to reports relevant to their report metric and KPIs. Everybody needs to see different types of reports. This seems like a scenario for report folder for each of these 3 teams and giving them access to the respective folders. And it's also giving an example that IT administrator only needs access to various adoption reports and metrics. Assuming all the teams have access to all objects, how can administrator control the report visibility? So we'll create 3 separate folders, assign those 3 separate teams to those folders, and let them have a view of their reports.